So I just had another dream. This dream was really, really cool. It's pretty self-explanatory. I was at a group Bible study with some people in a house, and there was a tall gentleman. He looked like he was Indian descent, um, thin, tall, and he was had a big, big book, and it was a Psalm study guide, almost kind of like as big as a Bible concordance, but it was solely on Psalms. And he was reading different study passages out of it, and a lot of the Psalms were coming out of the New Testament. And I thought to myself while he was doing it, I says, "Oh, I didn't know there was so many Psalms. I thought it was just in the book of Psalms. I didn't realize that there's Psalms really throughout the whole Bible." And when the Bible study was over, I walked over to him and I said, "Hey, thanks for sharing. I didn't really realize that there were so many Psalms, even in the New Testament." And his reply was, "Oh yeah," he says, "take a look at this book." And he picked up this book and it was big and it had a beautiful blue color. And I think it said Psalm Study Guide. And it had the edge of the pages were of gold gilt. There's not nice Bibles that have the gold along the edges of the paper. It was like that. And he says, "Oh yeah," he says, "look at this book." And he picked it up, showed it to me. He says, "Oh, it was only $500." And I was thinking to myself at the time, $500. I says, that seems a bit expensive to me right now. But to him, because he was so close to the Lord, and we know the Lord owns all the gold, all the silver, all the cattle on 1,000 hills, that it was nothing. He acted like it was no big deal. It was nothing, you know. And he showed it to me, and it was beautiful. And I just said, "Oh well, thank you for sharing." And then he put it down and he gave me a hug, a really long felt friendly hug. And then I woke up and I realized, started talking to the Holy Spirit about the dream, and he says, besides your daily reading, he says, I really want you to start getting into the book of Psalms and studying it. He says, I want you to think about David's life. David was considered one of the lowliest sons out of the family. When King Samuel came to Obed's house, he says, I want all your sons to be there. Obed didn't even think very highly of his youngest son David because he had one of the lowest jobs. He was a shepherd, which was a very lonely job, a very lowly job. He didn't even bother inviting him to the dinner. And after Samuel went through all the sons, he says, Don't you have any more sons? And he says, Oh, yeah, I got a son, but he's out watching the sheep. And Samuel's like, Well, hurry it up and get him. So if you think about it, wherever your walk is in life, you might think you're at your lowest point, or you might think to yourself that you're not much of anything. But David spent his life praising and worshiping the Lord and speaking of his faithfulness. And God turned around and elevated him to be king. Now, of course, he went through a lot of obstacles getting there. Saul tried to kill him. He lived under the stars and constantly on the run for a couple of years. I'm sure there was many days he was hungry. I mean, he went through some tough obstacles. But if you think about it, during his run in his life, he was always praising and thanking God. If you read the Psalms. So even in the tough times, he was still thanking the Lord. And then I want you to think about this. If you read the later Psalms in the book of Psalms, you'll see that at the top it'll say that it's written by Asaph, a musician of David or a friend of David. So if you think about it, even though David became king, he still surrounded himself with people who were worshiping and praising God at all times. So think about that too. So stay in a state of thanksgiving, stay in a state of praise. Um, and constantly confess the faithfulness of God. And he will elevate you out of your troubles, or he will bring you through your troubles, and he will give you great honor, is what I got out of the dream. So anyway, that's it. But really, really cool dream. So I just thank the Lord for sending me another dream. It was really, really awesome. So anyway, God bless y'all. Love you.